Good afternoon and welcome to another season of Forever Young. I'm your host, David Linton, and time has just flown. We've just been able to have so much fun bringing you information about things that affect people who affect seniors. As we like to say, life begins at 40, and everything before that is a dress rehearsal. So welcome to another season of Forever Young. Of course, I could not do this show without my two co-hosts, one that keeps us together and one that keeps us looking good because she's beautiful. Of course, I'm talking about the lovely Miss Jean Hendricks and Dr. Sharon Mitchell. Hello, ladies.
Hi, how are you today? I am just wonderful. It's good to be back, David.
Dr. Mitchell, I know she's there.
I'm here. Hi, David. This is Dr. Mitchell. I'm glad to be with the group, excited about our new season. Great seeing you again.
Well, this show is always talking about something exciting. And, we are talking today about something that's very important to all of us. It really doesn't matter what age you are, but as we get older or as we season, sleep is so important. When you're younger, you can run on 4 hours. You're supposed to get 8 hours of sleep. But as you get older, your body might need a little bit more. And so how do we make those adjustments so that we can still stay vibrant? Well, we've got someone who's going to tell us a little bit about that. But before I introduce our guest, we have a standard here at Forever Young, and that's when Miss Jean Hendricks gives us a little pearl of wisdom that sort of sets the tone for the day. And so, Jean, I know you have something for our audience today.
Yes, I do, David. Thank you. And I'm excited about this one because it's all about sleep, and that is so important to all of our lives. And it begins by saying, reward yourself with sleep. After a long, dry, and very tiring day, the good old night is finally on your way. It is time when the moon is up there, glows and gleams, and the hour when it tells us to have sweet dreams. So, my dear friend, reward yourself with sleep tonight. Here, I stop by to your side to wish you a very good night. Back to you, David.
Well, thank you. That's great. And I'm going to have to keep that one. You should have recorded your voice, so that's a nice little lullaby. That is something that we all need. Sleep. So let's jump right into this show. Today's guest is, we're really pleasant and really pleasure to have Dr. Glenna Brewster. She is an associate professor on the tenure track at the Nell Hodgson Woodruff School of Nursing at Emory University. She graduated with bachelor's and master's of science in nursing, master's of arts in gerontology, and has a PhD in nursing science from the University of South Florida, completing her postdoctoral fellowship with the Center for Sleep and circadian, neurology. Wow. And at the University of Pennsylvania School of Medicine. Her program of research focuses on understanding sleep, the disturbance experienced by people living with cognitive impairment and their care partners. Dr. Brewster is currently funded by the Alzheimer's Association and National Institute on Aging. She serves on the board of directors for the National Hartford Center for Gerontological Nursing Excellence. And Dr. Brewster has published her work in multidisciplinary journals, including Geriatric Nursing and the Journal of Aging and Health. We'll talk more about her vast background, but let's bring her to the stage right now and bring her on camera. Dr. Brewster, thank you and welcome to Forever Young.
Thank you so very much for having me here on Forever Young with you all. And I just wanted to say that one day I hope to get to associate professor, but currently I'm an assistant professor on the tenure track. But soon enough, I'll get to associate.
That's right. We just spoke that into existence. That's what we see the future here,
Yes,
That's exactly what we do here. And so we're glad to have you here. And again, we want to talk about something that's so important. And so I'm going to jump right in with our first question. First, again, we thank you. Can you just provide us, we are focusing on this healthy aging and importance of sleep. Can you share with us your work on sleep?
So my work on sleep started a while ago, I would say maybe over 15 years ago, and I had an experience where someone close to me was having. As a result of that, I wondered what was the impact of having poor sleep with outcomes such as depressive symptoms or anxiety or any other psychological outcomes. So I decided to do my doctoral degree. So my PhD in nursing focused on looking at sleep, depressive symptoms, and cognitive function in older adults and caregivers of persons living with dementia. So that's kind of where my interest in sleep started. I also found out as I was going through my doctoral studies that caregivers of persons living with dementia are actually at an increased risk for developing cognitive impairment and dementia themselves compared to non caregivers. And I wondered what was the impact or whether or not poor sleep would play a role in them having an increased risk for cognitive function. During my doctoral studies, I also was able to deliver interventions, so behavioral interventions to these caregivers and interact with them and talk to them and hear about the impact of sleep on their lives and on their mental health and on their well-being.
I'm going to ask you the next question, and the question says, some research suggests that almost half of all people in the United States report problems with sleeping. Can you share with us why that is so?
So earlier, there's one of you alluded to the fact that people when they're younger, they tend to think that they can survive off 4 hours of sleep. So, maybe sleep is not that big of a deal when I'm younger because I can always come back and sleep more the following day, or I can catch up with it over the weekend. But what we're finding is that it doesn't matter the age, that sleep is very important. And there are so many functions that we've been finding that sleep play a role in. So, for example, when you're babies, babies tend to sleep 17 hours. And as we age, we do need less. So, teenagers might need close to 9 or 10 hours of sleep. And when you get into what we call the adult, so we say, anything over 21 or so, we suggest that you get between 7 to 9 hours sleep. And for older adults, at max, at minimum 7 hours sleep. So we encourage people to get at least 7 hours sleep, and that should be the goal. But research has been showing, and we've been finding out when they do large studies, that people in general, especially in the US, are sleeping less. And I think there are many reasons for that. So the first thing is that there are so many other responsibilities that we now have, and as a result of having all those responsibilities, then people tend to work more. And when we're working more, we're not prioritizing sleep as much. So the first thing that we tend to give up would be sleep in order to work more. So I think that's one of the main reasons that people tend to give up on their sleep. Another thing is that we have so much more social activities that we can participate in. If you're participating in these social activities, then we might choose to go to bed later. We might choose to not have schedules. We are traveling more back and forth. And with that, you have the jet lag that you introduced there. And with those changes, then people may not tend to sleep as much. But I think the main reason I would say is that there are so much more activities available to us for us to take part in and participate in. And also, we are working a lot more compared to back in the day, so more hours that we work per
Right.
week.
Maybe you can make retirement happen. After all, you made her college years happen. Opening that education savings account when she was little. Spearheading a campus tour. And another, and another, and another, and another. Bam! Deciphering financial aid. She was like, what? But now she's like, you aced planning for college. Now get the tips you need to get on track at aceyourretirement.org.
Okay, I keep on saying self-reflection, but it's true. This is what I really think.
How do you recognize what you can do based off of what you want to do?
Come on, being honest with yourself. How can I fit this into my schedule? I think it's really being honest with yourself. And if you're in a hierarchy kind of organization, being honest with the people that manage you and are over you.
Since you're talking about the study itself, can you talk about why the study on sleep interventions on the psychological, cognitive, and physiological outcome? We know that you do quite a bit of research. Why do you feel this research is important on those three areas?
So I chose to focus on those three areas. So currently I'm doing what we call a review of literature, and a review of literature allows us to go and look through all the research that is there. And I'm focusing on caregivers of persons living with cognitive impairment because I said initially, that was the population that I initially started working with. And as I've continued to work with them, I've seen and I found out that they provide such an important service, but that they have such limited resources a lot of times. And in the literature that I found out is that sleep plays such an important role and increases risk for negative outcomes, negative health outcomes. So for example, we've seen that a lot of times when people have poor sleep, that they may report that they feel depressed, or it's associated with an increased risk for depressive symptoms. We've seen in the literature where, so my study for my dissertation, we found that all the caregivers who participated in that study actually had poor sleep. And when we looked at it with cognitive outcomes, so cognitive outcomes means executive function or ability to plan and follow through with activities, processing speed, how quickly we would see and hear information or read information and understand what it is saying. So we found that in these caregivers with poor sleep, they actually had worst outcomes with their what we call fluid cognitive function compared to the norms in that case. Whereas this was a highly educated sample, they actually did better at what we call crystallized cognitive function. So vocabulary and being able to express language, they did much better there because they were educated. But when we looked at things such as execute activities or make decisions, then they did worse there compared to the norms. So, this was another reason why I feel like interventions are necessary because I think if we do improve sleep, there's a potential for us to improve or protect or prevent changes in depressive symptoms, or decrease the risk for depressive symptoms, or protect you from having cognitive decline or cognitive changes. And on a physiological level, one of the things we've seen is so we're going to, I think one of the questions, and I'm sure we'll discuss it, has to do with the functions of sleep. And usually when we wake up, our bodies would secrete what we call cortisol, and cortisol is associated with inflammation in the body, and that's one of the physiological outcomes that I'll be looking at to see whether or not, if we do have an intervention to improve sleep, is it going to have a change on the response we have with cortisol, or the response we see with cortisol when we wake up in the morning. So sleep just plays an important role in so many processes that happens within our bodies, or so many processes that we express, or so many of our health outcomes. That's why I believe that intervening by improving sleep would then have a positive impact on these outcomes.
Thank you, Dr. Bruce. If you're just joining our program, this is Forever Young. And we're talking with Dr. Glenna Brewster, an assistant professor on the tenure track at the Nell Hodgson Woodruff School of Nursing at Emory. And we're talking about sleep and the importance of sleep. You've given us so much important information, Dr. Brewster. Now, we've all heard about, different kinds of sleep, levels of sleep. Can you tell our audience what are um, understand the different levels of sleep and what kind of sleeps? We understand that we all fall asleep and it's not, all sleep is not the same. Can you share with us the various types of sleep?
Sure. So sleep is so important. And when we do sleep, there are many things that happen when we're asleep. So, for example, it allows the brain to what we call combine experiences into making memories. So it consolidates our memories. So it allows us to put everything that we maybe went through during the day or the experiences we have and allows us to remember them ultimately. It helps to facilitate learning, but while we are also asleep, that it also helps with secretion of hormones. So it guides the secretion of hormones, or it makes hormones and secretes them. And then the longer we're awake or during the day when we're awake, our body and our brains make what we call, so for example, beta amyloid and tau, so proteins that are metabolic waste products. And when we're asleep, then our bodies or brains is able to get rid of them, is able to excrete them. And research has shown that it excretes them at a better rate and at a faster rate and more efficiently when we're actually asleep. So, as you say, all sleep isn't equal, or all sleep, so we have REM sleep and non-REM sleep. Non-REM sleep, there are actually three stages. We have stage one, stage two, and stage three. So we're all awake now, and when we say that we're ready to go to sleep, we go and we lay down and we feel drowsy. So at that point, that is stage one sleep where we're feeling drowsy. And stage two is when we are at a slightly deeper level than feeling drowsy. So we're about to kind of get off into what we will call deep sleep. And most of our night or most of our sleep is spent in stage two sleep. So from drowsy to stage two, and then stage three sleep is the deepest stage of sleep for non-REM. And this is where, deep sleep occurs and it becomes shorter as the night progresses. And this stage is the stage that plays a role in memory consolidation. So, putting our experiences together, connecting them with previous experiences that we would have to ensure that the memory stays and remains. And then we have REM sleep, which is rapid eye movement sleep. And rapid eye movement sleep, we say usually that is where dreaming occurs. And the way that we know it's rapid eye movement sleep, one of the things that a physician would do or healthcare provider, they would send you for a polysomnogram. And when you go for a polysomnogram, you would be asked to put electrodes on your head, and they'll monitor your brain. So that's an electroencephalogram. Then they'll put electrodes by your eyes. They'll monitor your eye movements. It'll monitor your muscle movements. So they'll put electrodes there. They'll also monitor your chest to monitor how you're breathing, and then they'll put an oximeter over your one of your fingers to see whether or not how your blood supply is throughout your body. But for the stages of sleep, one of the things they do back in the day, it would be that before they had PSGs, they look at you when you're in REM sleep, and they look at your eyes and they see that your eyes are moving back and forth. And on a polysomnogram, when you read it out, it actually looks like you're awake. So when you look at both, when you look at awake and REM sleep, the markings look very similar. But the difference is when you're looking at muscle activity, there is no muscle activity or hardly any muscle activity when you're in REM sleep compared to when you're awake. So that's usually the difference. And one of the things that we would see is if you're in REM sleep and you have muscle activity or you're acting out your dreams, as we say, that's one of the ways that we can diagnose REM sleep behavior disorder. which is a sleep disorder that people can have. So if you're saying, if you with people and they're like, yes, my loved one is acting out their dreams, or when they're dreaming they're hitting me and doing these things, it's possible that they may have REM behavior disorder, and that's one of the ways that it can be diagnosed, and it most likely will be diagnosed.
Today I have with me State Farm Agency owner, Miss Natalie Reed. Most people don't realize that they need, even if you have a business at home, you need to make sure that you have insurance to protect yourself. We're going to get into that one. Yes.
Every day, thousands of kids start vaping. And I can't let this happen to my kid. Of course, it's awkward to talk to your kids about the dangers of vaping. Hey, bestie, how's sketches? Ready? It's hard to get their attention. Ready? Go. Yes. Look at that. You didn't turn yours over. So if you want to talk to your kids about the dangers of vaping, you got to get it trending.
No, you're doing it wrong.
Let's go.
Can we talk?
Yeah, what's up?
Visit talkaboutvaping.org for tips on when and how to have the vape talk.
Let me tell you the topic for real. It's my vision board isn't working. How many of you all can identify with that already? My vision board isn't working. How do you accomplish the goals that you set before you?
This is my big one. I set myself up for success in all of these things. So it may be researching and gathering information. It may be like, if I'm trying to be healthy, I'm going to have a plan to go to the farmer's market on the weekends. If I say I'm not going to date no more not good people, then I'm going to make those phone calls. I'm saving them in the phone as do not answer. Like, I set myself up to be successful.
Thank you. That's a lot of information, Dr. Brewster. And in fact, let me tell you, you missed one of your clients. I don't know why I was not contacted for that research. I need to be a part of it because I have a problem sleeping. So I need to get into your study so I can find out what I need to do. So anyway, that was very informative for me because it was personal also. How many hours of sleep is needed for an adult?
So one of the things, and we call it a myth, where people say that you have to get 8 hours of sleep. 8 hours of sleep is the gold standard. And I believe when people hold that 8 hours of sleep up as the standard, then when you get less or more, then you tend to feel that you're not doing it correctly. So what the sleep societies have done is they've provided a range. So we say for adults, between 7 to 9 hours is the target.
Wow.
I have done some research where we
Wow.
show that less than 7 or about 6 hours or so, or more than 10, actually is associated with some negative outcomes. So we're aiming for between 7 to 9 hours of sleep.
Let me interrupt you right there. Okay, and I'm speaking again from a personal point of view. If a person cannot sleep and they decide to take a sleeping tablet, is that a positive step toward getting the number of hours that you say? I don't even know what 8 to 9 hours sleep look like. Maybe that's what's wrong with me. I'm not wild.
Well, 7 to 9 hours. But when you say
we found the cure. No.
Yes.
When you say sleeping tablet, it depends. So is this a sleeping tablet that's prescribed by your physician and they're able to monitor you for, or is this like an over-the-counter sleeping tablet like melatonin or a Tylenol PM or one of those things? So it depends on what the sleeping tablet is.
My doctor prescribed it, but I very rarely take it because I'm a person that does not agree on taking all kind of pills and stuff like that. So I very rarely take it.
So you stay
Okay.
So I
awake.
can tell you
Yes,
from
I get up and do
I can tell
things.
you from research that behavioral interventions are oftentimes, so there's for in well, so you'll go to your physician or your nurse practitioner or your physician assistant, whichever one you have, your healthcare provider, and then they will evaluate you. So based on what their diagnosis is, so for example, if their diagnosis is
Right.
insomnia, meaning you have enough time in order to get enough sleep, but you have a hard time falling asleep. When you wake up during the night, you're up for an extended period of time, or you wake early in the morning, and sometime during the day you have some daytime impairments, so you might feel sleepy, you might feel tired, you might have some things where you feel like I'm just not thinking clearly. So when you have things like that and they say, well, maybe you have insomnia, then cognitive behavioral therapy, which is a behavioral intervention that can teach you, can identify the behaviors that you have that might be promoting poor sleep, and can then teach you habits to redevelop and get better sleep, has been shown to be more effective and as effective as medications in treating insomnia. But a lot of times there's not enough people who are trained to deliver CBTI, and it's easier to give a tablet because when you do, you see more immediate results as opposed to if you're doing a behavioral intervention where you have to practice at it for, maybe 3 to 6 weeks before you can say, well, I definitely see changes that I can continue to do. With medications, there are side effects that are associated with it. So
Yeah.
depend on the type of medication that is prescribed, for older adults, they may see an increased risk for falls or an increased risk for, more cognitive changes and decline or things like that. Or if based on the type of medication it is, you might have dry mouth or increased risk for constipation. So you might have to be drinking more water. So it depends on the type of medication it is that you're taking that you might have to be aware of that. Whereas for CBTI, initially you might feel some type of a sleepiness, but ultimately over the long run, and they've done studies with 6 months and a year, they've followed up with people and they found that when they've taught them that and they follow through, that their sleep has improved and remained improved. So it depends on the diagnosis you have. If you have sleep apnea, which quite a few older adults may tend to have, that is where, maybe if you're falling asleep and you might wake up out of your sleep because your snoring woke you up, or if you have a loved one who said you were snoring really loudly, it felt like you stopped breathing, or it felt like you stopped breathing for a few seconds there and then you started snoring again, kind of to wake you up and to get you breathing, then that might need the treatment with CPAP or a BiPAP machine. But once more, it is your sleep medicine or your healthcare provider who will be able to provide this diagnosis and treatment and management for you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Very
But I
informative.
would say if you start on a medication, to look for any effects that you might be having and speak to your healthcare provider about that. And don't start an
Okay.
over-the-counter medication for sleep
Oh no.
without discussing it
No.
with your healthcare provider.
Right.
Well,
Right.
I'm going to have to jump in here. This has been very informative, a lot of information. We definitely couldn't fall asleep on this conversation. We're going to have to ask Dr. Brewster, will you be able to come back for part two? Because there are so
Sure.
many other questions that we wanted to get out for our audience, but what you've given us today is
Yeah.
definitely something that we need to sleep on and take it at heart. So because
Yeah.
there's sleep is very important, and it's something that, as you say, in this day and age of us moving and doing with so many distractions, social media, etc., we really don't get to sleep as much as we do. And then Jean pointed out the fact that there are times when you can't sleep for whatever different reasons. And as you were breaking down some of the different stages of sleep, we know that there's some more questions we want to ask you to come back and share with our audience. So on behalf of Jean Hendricks and Dr. Mitchell, producers, and our executive producers at Hope TV, Dr. E. Dewey Smith, and all the people behind the scenes at Hope TV, we'd like to thank you for sharing this time with us on Forever Young. And we look forward to getting back with you next week. And to you who are looking on at our show, tell everybody that we're back for another exciting season of Forever Young on Hope TV. And remember, life ain't nothing but a number, and you are forever young. For Gene Hendricks and Sharon Mitchell, I'm David C. Linton. Take care. Nighty night.